Welcome to Professional Quotient, or PQ. I'm Jason Winningham, your host, and today we have a very special guest, Dr. Cree. Dr. Cree, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Jason.
Absolutely. Would you like to take a moment and just introduce yourself to us, a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. I am Dr. Cree. I am from Los Angeles, California, and I now reside in Dallas, Texas. I am a mother, a wife, a sister, a granddaughter, and I absolutely love service. And so what I do is I am a nonprofit management service consultant where I support organizations who are doing good in the world do it better. And so that's supporting them with organizational development, sustainability, grant writing, program development, all things related to nonprofit organizations.
Wow, there's a lot in there within a nonprofit.
Absolutely. And I love, my specialty is really working with youth. I spent a lot of time doing youth development for a number of years, specifically girls' youth development. And so I like, mentoring groups and organizations. I'm currently writing a book that is a journal to support young girls who are navigating life and transitioning to adulthood. So there's a lot that happens over here under this camp.
Absolutely. And so what does your typical day kind of look like?
Wild. I should preface this by saying that, I really set my life up so that I can finish schooling and have a career prior to having children. And so I do have young children. And so I recently pivoted from a full-time job to a full-time consultant so that I could be more present with my children. And so that is my number one priority, is to be present with my children, to be at their school events, all of the field trips and things of that nature. But any other time, I am taking client calls, I am building websites, I am developing programs, I'm helping to support someone with their grant writing. I'm presenting research and data at conferences. My bread and butter really is data and evaluation. And so I do a lot of that with organizations all over the country.
Awesome. Can I ask you how you got involved in this?
Oh, my. Okay. The long story short is I grew up in foster care.
Okay.
And so as a youth in the foster care system, I was switching schools every year. And in 7th grade, I remember my math teacher asking me if I can support a student who was struggling in math. I happened to be a good student. And so I said, sure, no problem. And so I helped that student for a number of weeks. And they were so grateful that they brought, this is going to date me, they bought me an VHS of the NSYNC concert, right? So when the boy bands were out. And that person was so appreciative of the support that I was giving. And for me, it was just a natural, relationship that we had. But then I thought to myself that while I don't have a lot of money I have time and I have skills, and I was able to lend that time and those skills to someone in need. And that really is a thing that started my journey in service. So I would volunteer places. And then as I was navigating college, I consistently volunteered. I found myself volunteering in schools, found myself volunteering in community. And that was just something consistently that I did, not for recognition, not for pay, but something that I truly enjoyed. And so when I was thinking about my career, I went to get my master's in urban affairs and public policy at the University of Delaware. And they had a nonprofit management track. And so it just called to me. So that's when I started doing the educational nonprofits. I found that this was something that was consistent in my life. I've always worked in nonprofits and just have become extremely good at it. So building programs, making connections. And that's how I got into nonprofit management.
Awesome. So there's actually a degree for nonprofit management.
Absolutely. There's a lot to learn about this entire sector. We call ourselves the third sector. And so there's a lot to know about the nonprofit sector. There's compliance, there's policies, there's, different ways in which we move within the sector that is, lends itself to people who are trying to do good in the world.
For clarity, the third sector would be meaning private, public, and nonprofit?
Exactly.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Exactly.
Sometimes I just nod and shake my head, but I really don't have any idea. So I just wanted to actually check in.
I appreciate that clarity. Yes, absolutely. The third sector. Exactly.
Awesome. That really is, it's a whole lot. And one of the ones that stuck out to me was like grant writing. Like that's kind of can you talk to us a little bit about what that actually means?
Yeah, it's an art and a science, right? And so I like to think that one of my specialties is being able to take this grandiose thinking, these big ideas, this big vision, and dwindle it down to something that is really bite-sized, something that is digestible, but that still comes to life. And so grant writing is telling a story and making sure that you are detailing what impact you want to have on the world. And so it's a beautiful science. It's a beautiful art of the data and evaluation. How are you going to measure success, right? And I go beyond the simple count, right? Like how many people showed up to your event? How many people, participated in X, Y, and Z, right? Like a lot of nonprofit organizations simply count as their way of showing like impact. We served a number, X amount of people. And I want to say, how did lives change as a result of your program? How did you change a mindset? How did you change a viewpoint? How did you change a circumstance as a point because of your intervention in someone's life? So that's what I like to take it beyond the count and make sure that that's included in all of your grants, right? And so funders are looking for that. And that's what I do.
I like that. Take it beyond the count. And that is also something that within the public sector, working corporate America for so many years myself, I'm accustomed to thinking of ROIs, your return on investments, and a lot of times it is finding numbers, how many people showed up to something. And I like that what you're sharing is that within the grant writing, at least, you're almost serving as an influencer in your grant writing because you're trying to really sell the concept of the emotions of the event just as much as the event itself. Would that be accurate? Okay.
Absolutely. And it's getting a lot of times leaders and executive directors who are over these nonprofit organizations to see the bigger picture beyond the count. And so the count is something that you can do immediate. And then there's this kind of, intermediate space where you're like, well, what happens a year or two after my intervention? What has been the ripple effect as a, participant for my program? And that's long term. And a lot of people can't think that far ahead, but that's what's going to bring in the funding is being able to say long term, these types of people have these types of outcomes. And that's what we want to see in the world. Right. And so the job is that if you're tackling homelessness, that you don't have a job in 10 years because we've been successful in what we're doing. Right. And we have to think about our work that way, is that we're trying to eradicate whatever the social ill that we are tackling. So.
Well, I like that. And I like that you're telling the story with it, because sometimes when we have just numbers, it doesn't do enough. I can share an example. In one of my former roles, I was the manager of our employee resource groups at the company I was at. And we were a global company, and we could track that we had a percentage growth, month over month over month. But what wasn't tracked with all those numbers was that when we were having these roundtable discussions and bringing our leaders together and seeking out opportunities for intersectionality and lifting each other up, what wasn't captured in those numbers were how many of those neural networks were being formed, and how people on one team would say, oh, I'm looking to create this program to do XYZ. And serving in my capacity, I knew there was another team over here that was doing the same thing. It was like, oh, you don't have to recreate the wheel. Just talk to Stacy over here. And those kinds of connections could be told in the story, but they wouldn't necessarily reflect in 10%, growth of membership. So I'm curious, so in that field and telling those stories, you have to kind of marry that ROI with that emotive story. What would you say is, I don't know, your most exciting one that you've ever written, or which was one that you ever was really like, yeah, I really need to sell? Or let me step back and say, how do I ask this? Has there ever been a grant where you were trying to write it and you were struggling to find that story? Or no, you're not?
People are dynamic. People are absolutely dynamic. And I think where people get held up is they don't know what tools to use to survey. They don't know the questions to ask to survey the impact, right? The easiest thing to do is how many people showed up? Well, we anticipate that because 100 people showed up, those 100 people received services and they, connected with staff. But what was the quality of that staff? of that connection. That's what you're talking about. It's like the quality of that connection. And so
Hmm.
you then have to create something. There are validated tools that exist, right? That talk about a lot of these social conceptions. But what are the tools? What can we ask the question? So for instance, your example that you gave, did you make a meaningful connection at this organization? Yes, I made.
Yeah.
How many did you make? I made 3.
Mm.
What was
Mhm.
most powerful about that connection? And then you have the qualitative data. What made you, how did you connect with that person? That's interesting. Oh,
Everything.
casually,
Hmm.
I was connected by Jason, right? They were the keynote speaker. So you're understanding a little bit more about how those connections happen. So now when you're designing your next iteration of this conference, you know that you need more roundtables because that's where connection happens. You know, you need more formal time or informal time because that's when connections mostly happen. And that's what you want. So it helps with improving your programs as well as showing your funders that you can make an impact and here's how. Those connections then lead to what? And that's when it gets juicy because you're talking 5 years down the line and you're like, okay, are you and Jason still connected? And the
Hmm.
answer is yes. What have we done based on that connection? Oh, well, we've implemented this program. Jason's taught me about these other things, right? That connection is something that will live with you for many, many years to go. And how do you measure that? That's juicy.
Yeah, that is. That is. I appreciate you talking about that, and I like that, the qualitative with the quantitative. I like that.
Yes.
Now, we've talked a bit about nonprofit. I also saw from your website that you're a keynote speaker and that you host a conversation. Is that weekly?
It is weekly. So I host the conversation on Sundays now, talking to Black women about their experiences. And my hope is to create a journal. And it's a journal that consists of a myriad of stories from Black women as they're growing older. And so one of the things that that inspired me as a young person was, remember the chicken noodle soup for the teenage soul? Do you remember the chicken noodle soup
Yes,
series, right?
yes, yes.
Everyone
That
read it.
also baits us, by the way, because I
No,
haven't heard of it in a while, but I definitely
listen.
remember when it was all the rage. Yes.
It was
Uh-huh.
all the rage, and they still exist. But the
Yeah.
teenage soul really spoke to me when I was at doing in a lot of transition in my life as a teenager. And so I remember those books, and I remember reading about forgiveness, and I remember those
Mm,
stories, and those stories were so impactful. And so in the work that I do in youth development and talking to former foster youth and at-risk youth and underserved communities and the adults that work with them, I want to be able to give them something that,
mm,
that they can read and share in experiences with other Black women and to say
hmm.
that you are not alone, that there's
Yes.
hope and that, behind Dr. Cree, there are a lot of decisions and choices that I made that I'm not proud of, but it has made me better and made me who I am today. So to not hide behind the choices that you've made, good or bad. And so it's highlighting circumstances and life choices on this podcast. It's called it's not a podcast, it's on IG Live, called Unburdened. And it's 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Sundays. And it has been an absolute beautiful space to share stories. I'm also collecting stories in written format. Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Yeah. So if you want to
Right.
write your story, again, this is going to go into a collection of stories and then it's going to turn into a journal where folks can reflect on their own experiences. And so I'm really excited about the project. And that's primarily who I speak to when I do my keynotes is underserved youth who are systems involved and the adults who support them.
Awesome. And can I ask how long have you been involved in that kind of work?
Oh my gosh. In family, since I could talk. No, you know what? I really found a passion for it probably after my PhD program
Okay.
because my professor at the time, she said, why are you here? So what do you mean? I want to get a PhD. Like, what are you talking about? I'm pretty good at school. I can do this. She said, no, people like you don't get PhDs. And I said, well, what do you mean? She said, didn't you grow up with your grandmother? And she said, yes. It's in my written statement to get in school. Didn't you grow up with your grandmother? I said, yes, I lived with her for a time. She's like, didn't you know your mother and your father had all these issues? I said, yes. She was like, so you were in foster care. And I was like, yeah, I was kinship care. She said, people like you don't get PhDs. And that's what started me down the spiral of
Mm.
doing the research on the outcomes of youth who are in foster care. and finding out that only 3% graduate with their bachelor's degree.
Okay.
Right?
So she wasn't making a statement that was prescriptive. She was trying to be descriptive.
Exactly. And
Okay.
had
I get
no
confused by
idea.
that sometimes with people. Like,
Yeah.
what are you trying to say here? Okay.
Same.
Okay.
Same. But it led
Yeah.
me down a path that I wasn't even truly aware of. Like I knew I had a
Mm,
past that was different maybe than others, but I didn't know that there was some type of exceptionality for me that
mm,
led me to where I was. And I didn't understand that perhaps there was something special about me. Perhaps there was someone in my life that helped to mold me and move me forward so that I could be in a position like this to be
mhm.
influencing of other folks.
I love that. I'm a huge believer that every single person has value to bring to the world and that sometimes we just need help learning where it is. So I love that you had that influence.
Same.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you for sharing that with us. And on the Professional Quotient podcast, we always dive into what do you think is the most valuable part of your PQ? And we measure that through how we engage our skills, knowledge, experience, education, and our community. What do
What
you
is the
think?
what's the most valuable? To be honest, relationships,
Mm, hmm.
my network.
And how do
Imagine,
you use it? Yeah.
well,
Hmm.
imagine a young girl from South Central who first generation college student. I had to navigate all of those systems myself.
Hmm.
Navigate grad school, navigate, double grad school to PhD and in my profession. And so if you don't have mentorship, you're just out there making decisions that aren't grounded in real world experiences because I didn't
Sure.
have a traditional parent, to guide me in these types of decisions. So I think my network has been extremely valuable to helping not only navigate tough situations. There's politics in the workplace
There
that
are. Yeah, there are.
I don't like to participate. I like to do good
Hmm.
work. I like
Yeah.
to help people. I like to put my head down and just do good work, but politics exists. And I had mentors show that to me. And 9 times out of 10, I was the youngest person in the room. I was the
Hmm.
only person of color. I had the most
Hmm.
education. So people were looking at me and they could not understand, why I was
They didn't
Dr.
know what peg to put you in.
Low and would try to quiet me.
Mm.
Right. And so when we start talking about kind of navigating those professional worlds and being in those spaces, a lot of times I was being hushed because I was too young or,
Cool.
I didn't have enough experience to back up my education. And so I had to grapple with that quite a bit. So I had good people in my corner to constantly affirm me and who I am and how I come to this space because I was born with this gift, I was
Absolutely.
and it wasn't something that I got from school. School is just an added value. My life
Hmm.
experiences were an added value, but I was born with the gifts that I have to be at the same table as some of these older folks.
For having only known you for approximately 18 minutes, I would not guess that you're an introvert. I'd guess you're an extrovert. Is that correct? Because you bring it. I'm just the reason I ask, and you can answer it in a second, is how did you go about making those mentors, those people? Like, how did you knock on people's doors and just are you bold like that in life? Is my question. Yeah.
Jason, this is such an interesting question.
Mm,
Because I grew up in foster care, a lot of times I was very silenced. I was
mm,
afraid to say too much because it might get my parents in trouble. I was
mm,
afraid to, right? Like, so I was the
mm-hmm,
quiet kid that was very smart, that kind of was underground a lot.
mm.
And so in those instances, I tell everybody all the time, I was extremely shy. I
You
was
are.
very
Mm.
shy. Yeah, I got picked on quite a bit, and it was interesting. I then moved into a space where I was angry all the time. I
Mm.
didn't understand.
Mhm.
I moved to a very affluent area in Orange County, California, and I did not understand the amount of wealth that these people had and that I wasn't used to and I didn't have myself, and the
Oh.
complaints that they had about their lives that seemed completely superficial. And
Mhm.
so in that anger, though, I did find my voice. I spoke out against injustice and inequity. I was one of, a handful of Black people in a mostly white school. And it was
Mhm.
it was hard. And so I found a voice there. It wasn't probably the right voice all the time, but it was a voice. Okay.
Sometimes we need a voice, right or wrong. Sometimes we just need the voice.
We
So,
just needed it. And I found it there. I found power in being able to stand up for myself and to question things and say, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't seem right. And then I went on to college. And that's when I went to a Black school. I went to an HBCU, Spelman College. And so that is where I really found the voice that was powerful. That's the voice you see today because I knew I
mhm,
was safe. I knew I
nice.
was in an environment that loved me, that really held on to me and lifted me up and believed in me. And so when I went
Mhm,
on to my PhD program, my master's program, my PhD program, and I was hit with folks that were not of, African American descent that
mhm.
tried to break me down, that tried to tell me that I couldn't make it, that told me that I couldn't survive in a PhD program. I had all that strength from those that have already lifted me up. I had already found my voice. So they found me too late and I was able to fight through and
Good.
here I am. So I
Hmm.
would say that it was a work in progress because
Okay.
in high school, I remember saying, let me find women that I admire. And I want to take a
Hmm.
little piece of that from every one of them and kind of develop the person that I am today. I want to
Sure.
walk into a room and I want people to say, who is that? I want to be her friend. Right. And so I feel like I've accomplished that. So
You accomplished that via LinkedIn with me because I reached out to you thinking I want to be her friend. Like so it's working. Whatever you're throwing down, I'm picking up.
thank
So
you, thank you, thank you. It's work, and I will say that it's intentional. And some people might
mm,
call it fake or inauthentic, but I was really truly trying to find out who I wanted to be. And it takes work. It takes
sure does.
intentionality. You don't
Yeah.
just become, right? Michelle
Mm.
Obama's becoming, right? Like you
I was
have
gonna
to
say,
work
yeah,
at it.
becoming. Hmm.
Yes.
Hmm. Absolutely. And we're always becoming. And that's the thing.
Absolutely.
We're that it's never done. And we're talking right now, but if we talk again in 10 years, we're essentially new people again. Like we've
Absolutely.
learned so much more, or at least I hope we're new people. Like how boring if we're not.
No, I mean, I'm a work in progress, right? Like I will
Same,
never,
same. Mm,
ever come to the table and say, I'm complete, I'm done. There's so
hmm.
much learning to be done. I think the question you were asking was about, you know, um, your professional equity. And it has to be in relationships, finding people that will hold you accountable for your actions, that can have
Hmm.
open and honest conversations with you. And you can negotiate and say, this is where I want to be. Okay, well, friend, what you're doing currently is not going to get you there. Okay, I
Hmm.
hear you. What do we have to do differently? And to have people around you that will support you and love you in a way that will be direct with you and hold you accountable.
I like your answer because it's not just community in the sense that, oh, I know a lot of people. You're talking about an engaged community. So mentorship, and I heard accountability specifically. I'm assuming that within that, you might also, or maybe I'm just adding to that, that accountability partners and mentorships usually lead into sponsorships where people are talking positively about you in rooms you're not in.
That's it.
Um, and uh, that's part of the power of networking. And so I appreciate that was your response. Are there other aspects of the community that we didn't cover that you would want to add in?
I think what's really important is the authenticity piece, right?
Yes.
I
Talk to us
am,
about why. Yeah.
listen, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. And I love that for me, right? I love that for me. But I like to be in spaces where people can appreciate the energy that I bring. They appreciate the value
Hmm.
that I bring. And one of the other reasons why I pivoted from, working a 9 to 5 to being on my own is because there's a certain way that I like to do things. There's a certain vibe that I have. There's a certain way I like to show up and be myself. And I want to be in spaces where people can appreciate that. Right. And so there's a certain authenticity that I believe you have to have in those types of relationships. And I'm all about quality. I am not one to have a whole bunch of friends. The running joke is like, I've got 5 friends, right? And so, amongst my friend group, and I am okay with that because those friendships are deep. Now I've got layers
Hmm.
of people that I care for and that I'm in community with, right? So it doesn't negate the fact that you still need a village, but
You do.
my close folks, right? Like that's who I
Hmm.
can be my true authentic self. with. And I think that's the most important thing that you need as you're navigating this professional world.
I very much resonate with that. And I want to share something I heard. Now, I'm going to get the numbers a little wrong because numbers aren't my thing. I always tell people I am directionally accurate. I am not precise. Just keep that in mind. But I was once at a presentation when I was hearing about how people make these professional connections that help them get new roles, basically. And they talked about how all people have these layers of friendships, like an onion, sort of. But the first layer is one or two people, like spouse, parent, like absolute best friend, like that kind of a. The next layer is around five people. So we have about five, again, in general, not everybody, not exactly, but we have about five close friends past that, they know are good, bad, and all the ugly. And then the next number jumps to something. This is where I might be way off. It's around like 270 people. Yeah, it goes from 270. And the 270 is like the people you see every day at work, or the people that you like, maybe you go to the same grocery store and you talk to the lady at the checkout and she becomes, name on name basis. Those connections, those 270, and that's those people that we see all the time, but we don't necessarily have those deep conversations. Maybe they don't know what I'm struggling with in my personal life, but that's okay because we have a working relationship. And they say it's within those 270 that people are most likely to find job opportunities through. It's somebody that they've just connected in their day. But the only reason I mentioned any of that is because you mentioned the five, and I was thinking that's good because that's on track. Like we're supposed to have about five. Well, I don't know about supposed to, but we do on average. So yeah, that's cool. And now that I went on the tangent, I'm sorry I forgot my place here. I want to just circle back, though, with the PQ. So your community, and one of the follow-up questions I have for PQ is about how we raise our PQ. Are there things that you do to specifically in regards to community help build that?
For me, I think it goes back to time. It goes
Mm-hmm.
back to intentionality. So a friend of mine introduced this idea around Think Day, right? And so I know. She introduced this idea around Think Day where we spend 6-7 hours thinking about our businesses, and we're in similar fields, and we're
Mm-hmm.
able to troubleshoot and talk things through and have a thought partner, and it's a full day. Imagine the depth of that relationship after a Think Day. And so now I've started doing that with connections that I'm just now meeting, because now there's a young lady I recently met who's in Houston who I love and adore. And I met her through another friend. It just so happened we're both consultants. We're relatively new to the consulting space, full time at least. And we've
Mm-hmm.
had 2 Think Days. We just finished writing an RFP together. I know a lot more about her business, right? But now she's a part of my network. And now we are doing this gap. But it's the depth of that relationship. Another young lady who I've known in passing for some time, I reach out to her and say, hey, I'm doing the consulting thing. If something comes up, let me know. We had a meeting. Okay, well, now we have a quarterly check-in, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's about tending to those relationships so that the depth of them, right, grows, and not necessarily about the expansion. Because again, it's all about quality. And so I can meet a lot of people, but I want the depths of those relationships to be really deep. So I think that's what I do. I spend time. And I try to connect people and resources together, and I can value that in other people. Hey, I saw this and I thought about you, right? And let me just send this grant opportunity to you. And I think people can appreciate that and they reciprocate that. So
That's awesome. I think that's a very great way to build community, and it gives practical advice to people that are listening and wondering how to build theirs. Because you shared one example. If you're thinking about somebody when you see something, share it. It's not that
immediately,
difficult.
no,
Yeah.
thinking about you, right? And just send it off. And
Yeah.
people are going to say, wow. And I tell people all the time, you want to stay top of mind on someone else's like radar, especially if you're in the market of looking. I work with a lot of students, and I'm like, send me an update once a year on what you're
Mm-hmm.
doing, and not 6 years later when you need a recommendation letter,
Right.
right? I want
Mm-hmm.
I want to follow you. I want to see what you're doing and where you're moving and all the things. So make that a habit of yours to check in with people and create that depth.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Now, unfortunately, most of us in our professional worlds also come into challenges at some points. And the reason, and I like for this to be a bright, shiny podcast, but I also like to talk about the real life challenges that we have, because those two can serve as signposts and help for those that are listening to navigate challenges that they're having. So with all that said, is there anything that you feel comfortable sharing with us about a time when you overcome a challenge in the professional landscape?
How much time do you have?
Yeah.
No, it's good. And I will say that, and we've shared about this, that I have a big personality. And sometimes a lot of people will compare themselves or their other staff members to me and my personality. Oh, well, everybody can't be Lucretia. Well, I never asked them to. And so I consistently have had to figure out how to, maintain true to myself and make sure that other people know that it's okay to be authentically you as well. Yeah. This is not a competition. And so it's creating space for other people. It's putting my supervisors at ease that I don't want your job, right? I'm very clear about who I am and how I come up. And so you've got people who are trying to squander your ideas, squander your energy, squander your innovativeness, squander your positivity. Because there's issues, and a lot of people live in the space where we've done it for this long. We're just going to continue to do it this way. And that is antithetical to anything that I'm trying to do, right? I am like, nope, throw it all away. Let's start it all over. Let's go to the drawing board. Let's have some fun with this. And that can be intimidating to a lot of people, right? And so it is trying to figure out how to encourage and motivate stepping outside of your box, stepping outside of your comfort zone, while making other folks feel comfortable in the innovative space, right? So it's not squandering myself, but it's having to realize that you have to move strategically in order to make the change that you hope to see in workplaces. So that's been my biggest challenge as a professional, because I dream big. I dream really big. I have a huge vision of like what's possible. And you have to sell that to people. Because it's not possible. It can't happen. And I'm just the opposite. I'm like, it can happen. And here's how we're going to chart it out. And so once you get people to buy into what you're selling, folks are all on board. And I've been extremely successful in those ventures. And so, that's the thing for me.
I like that. And how do you marry being authentic with those moments when you need to be strategic and navigate that?
I think authenticity comes first, right? Because I truly care for a connection. And so I try to connect with you on a level that's beyond the work, right? Still maintaining professionalism and all the things, but it's making sure that you understand that my profession is just a sliver of who I am. It's just a sliver of the story. It's just a sliver of the pie. So you can't talk about Lucretia and not talk about my children. You can't talk about, Lucretia and not talk about my husband or my family and my friends that I adore. You just cannot get the full picture. And so what I try to do is make sure that there's the relationship before the rigor. Right. I always say there's got to be a relationship before rigor. If we're going to be in the trenches together, building and designing, we've got to know one another and to be able to have open conversations. So there was a young lady one time. This is a funny story. We were supposed to be doing a project together, and she didn't send me the final copy so that I could review it and sign off on it. And it was a bunch of mumbles. And I said, well, where is it? And it was a lie here and a lie there. And ultimately came down to, I didn't want to give it to you because you do too much, right? I didn't want to give it to you because you're going to edit this thing. And then I have to go back to the drawing board and do more to it. And I was like, or perhaps you do too little. And so it's that kind of accountability that said, hey, let me pull you aside. And that what you said was offensive. And now we've got to figure out how to work together, because this is my style and I have a standard. And if I put my name on it, you better believe that it's going to be at the highest standard.
Yeah.
And either you're on board or you're not, and so it's navigating those situations and that person respected me for coming straight up and just saying, what you said was hurtful. And this
Oh,
is how I move in the workplace. And let me just call you in, because it's not calling you out. It's calling you in to say, let's raise your standards. And how do we get ahead of this? Maybe we need an additional week to get this work done. So it's having those tough conversations like that where it's strategic, but also very authentic.
hmm. Now, it sounds like you're good with conflict resolution if you're able to do that. Okay. So does that come naturally? Did you take a course on that? How did you come to know how to do that?
I was in conflict. I was in conflict for a period of time with my supervisor and the
Mm.
executive director because, in the nonprofit world is so interesting. You are expected to wear so many different hats. And I
Mm.
was already stretched thin, but because I'm so capable, I felt as if they were just piling more and more on me. And at
Oh,
one
no.
point, I had to say, this is enough. You're not going to get the quality
Yeah.
because you keep piling things on me. And so there was a lot of conflict in terms of like pace and how we do things. And so I did get some executive coaching, what helped me to develop a style for how to have and solve conflict, which is really healthy. And now I love the opportunity to support young people who are developing in their profession to have those conversations with folks that they're in conflict with.
Oh, awesome. So do you do like role playing conversations?
I do all of that. So I do
Okay.
like I do leadership coaching as well. Right. And
Okay.
so it's some of that. And some of that is like, do you have leaders who don't know how to have these conversations with folks that report to them? So it's not
Hmm.
always, folks having conflicts with those that supervise them. It's the other way around. There's a lot
Sure.
of people that avoid conflict altogether. And for me, it's all about the work. If our
Hmm.
conflict is impeding on the work getting done to a higher degree, then we have to solve it. And so leadership development, a lot of leadership development I have to do with conflict, resolution and
Okay.
just facing it head on.
Hmm. Wow. Well, that's really the best way to do it. I mean, you open up a conversation and then you move forward, because the alternative is you bury it and then it's going to keep popping up. It's like that weed that you go to like pull from the ground, but it just keeps popping up over and over again. It's like, yeah, because you didn't get all the root out of it, like,
Your
yeah.
body feels that kind of resentment. It starts manifesting
Mm.
itself in acne. And look at our skin, like we can't have acne, but
I'm
it
feeling okay
manifests,
today.
right? Drink your water and stay stress free because it manifests itself in your skin and your sleep. And I've
Hmm.
been there, and I no longer want to go back, and I don't have to, because now
Right.
I've got the tools to be able to say this. And this is not just in their profession. It's with your family, it's with your friends, it's with your romantic partner. It's all of those things. So
Mhm.
yeah, let's just talk about it. Be authentic, say what we need, and how do we move past this?
I love it. Now, if someone were listening to this episode and they're saying, I want to be a Dr. Cree when I get older, or I want a career pivot into this kind of a space, what kind of advice would you give someone?
Ooh, oh my goodness. This has so many iterations for me. It really does, because I think about, first, be fearless in your approach to whatever it is. You have to be tenacious. You have to be motivated. You have to be disciplined in
Hmm.
whatever career, whether that's getting a PhD or not. Whatever it is for you, you have to be fearless in your approach. And I would also say to just be really clear about what it is that you do. My biggest thing is, don't be afraid to talk to people about your challenges. What
Hmm.
what's what is in the way? What are your barriers so that you can receive the support? In this season, I think it is believing in yourself,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Because if I'm being honest, entrepreneurship is not something that was ever in the cards for me. I was terrified to even be, I did contract work. I've been a consultant part-time on the side, but to think about stepping into this full time was I good enough? Was what I was offering, is it something that other people wanted?
Hmm.
Could I package it in a way that was attractive? Is it too much for me? All of the things. And so there was a lot of fear that set in. And so I would say, just go for it. Just
Hmm.
absolutely go for it. Take the pivot. And one thing I know about me is that I can bet on me 100%. I can bet on me. And I'm just really grateful that I took the leap, because, uh, it's been very rewarding the last year.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing that. And also, we like to give all of our guests on this show an opportunity to shine a light or spotlight on anything they like. What have you got for it?
Okay, so I think I told you, but I have this really cool project, and it's about Black women sharing their stories. And it is something that I'm extremely passionate about. And I am in need of participants to either write their stories or share their stories on my IG Live. And so you can follow me on Instagram. I am Dr. Cree at I am Dr. Cree, or you can send me a message through my website, iamdrcree.com, and really get involved with this project. And so I am looking for stories from all types of people, right? Like you do not have to have a PhD in order to tell your story, because again, everyone's making choices about their lives, and we want to inspire future generations to just not have to suffer in the same way that we did, right? Like we need to shed some light on those stories. And so, yeah, I'm always looking for keynote engagement. So whether you are working with youth or at-risk youth, foster youth, or you are from an organization that is youth focused, like I can come in and hopefully inspire by telling my own story and about resilience. And I'm always looking for clients, nonprofit clients, right? And so if you're looking for a strategic plan, organizational development, you feel like you're stuck in an area and you just can't move past it, you're looking to, resolve some conflict within your organization, you're looking to grow a program. I do all things nonprofit. And so, yeah, I just want to support. I just want to be helpful to people. I want to serve young people and the people who serve young people. I want to serve the nonprofit community and make sure that our communities are thriving and just be of service to folks. So that's what I do in a nutshell.
Awesome. And one more time, what was your website?
I am drcree.com.
Easy enough to remember, right?
Absolutely.
Good. Well, I certainly appreciate your time and your insight and sharing your voice here with us today. Thank you, Dr. Cree. Thank you.
Thank you for the platform. This has been an absolute blast.
Oh, same here. Same here. And to our audience, remember, if you've enjoyed this conversation, please like, share, subscribe. And if you want to go the extra mile, leave a positive review. That goes a long way. And also remember that unlike our IQ or our EQ, we can really easily raise our PQ every single day. We just have to keep learning, building, and connecting. Until next time.